We're joined by one of the most impressive hitters in the minor leagues right now, Rays first base and outfield prospect, Trey Morgan. Trey, thanks so much for taking the time, man.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So we'll just start with a softball here, and honestly, it feels like that's what's been thrown to you so far this season. When you look at the numbers so far, I mean, walking more than you've struck out as a pro, just absolutely locked in. And what's amazing, we're joking about it, like you even missed a little bit of time, come right back. You said there was like 3 games where you had to get back, into the swing of things, but then right back where you left off, and just continuing to mash again. Why has this been such a smooth transition? Maybe not for you. I'm sure there's been some like challenges there, but at least outwardly and statistically, how has this been such a smooth transition for you into professional baseball?
I mean, it's just learning what process works for me in a warm-up, because at this point, coaches obviously aren't always on your back, to make sure you lift, to make sure you get that pregame routine in. So in spring training, I found a pregame routine that really worked for me, because I had a rough spring training. In spring training, I was batting like 200. I was showing up like, man, I can't hit anything. And then I finally found a process that worked for me, that got my eyes adjusted and my hands ready to go into the game. And that's what I took from low A into high A now.
So you were sitting at a 10.0% K rate at LSU your last year. I think it was like 33 punch outs in 330 plate appearances. And then you jump into pro ball, and somehow that gets better. And dude, like that's not supposed to happen. If you K at a 10% clip, that's not supposed to go down when you get to pro ball, but you're sitting at 9.8 right now, man. Like what about that spring training process of getting your eyes adjusted? Like, what does that mean? Because obviously it's resulted in some exceptional things.
Right. It was going back to what makes me as a hitter. I'm a very handsy hitter. I throw my hands wherever the ball is, and hopefully my legs follow, but I'm going to touch it. That's my mindset. Like, it's going to go somewhere. So when I'm sitting in that bat, it's never a fear to get to 2 strikes. Like, if I take some borderline pitches, it's like, okay, like I'm not going to strike out though. Like, and then when I get to 2 strikes, it's fight until I can't fight anymore. It's anything close to the plate, I'm fouling it off. And when they make a mistake trying to be too cute up the middle, I take a single or a double.
Wow. So building off of that, what's amazing is you also have like 23 extra base hits this year, a lot of doubles, a couple triples, and 4 homers. How do you balance okay, I just want to get bat to ball and just make sure I don't punch, but still being a guy that can slug a little bit and split the gaps and be able to, again, your slugging percentage is 500 this year.
Yeah, I'd say I hit my homers by accident for sure. Like I hit it and I see it in there and I'm like, oh, like that's got a chance. But it's really just I'm trying to hit the ball hard. I've really been focused this year on my exit velos, making sure that I'm not just, getting jam hit singles. Like those are cool for like the average, but those don't really play. So I've been impressed with myself, honestly, with how hard I've been hitting these balls, even with 2 strikes. Because with 2 strikes, I spread out and I literally just flick my hands right to the ball. And I'm still getting the same, if not better, exit velos with 2 strikes. So, I mean, it's been working.
How have you gone about that? Because like you say batting average, like, it's cool and all that. You're hitting 364 in high A. So like I'd say that's pretty darn cool, man. But like, how did you go about finding that 2-strike approach? I want to start with that and then we'll get to the exit velo thing. But like the 2-strike approach, obviously we've talked about, Harper's adjustments, right? And how Harper really spreads out and gets deep and long. Did you look at a certain guy in the big leagues and was like, wow, he's experiencing success, let me try and replicate that? Or was that just something that felt right for you?
Yeah, it wasn't a guy in the big leagues. It was actually my teammate last year, Tommy White. I saw him doing it with 2 strikes and hitting homers, and I'm like, dude, that works, right? And he's like, yeah, I mean, you kind of just rock and you're still into your legs. And we messed around with it in the cages last year, and I did it to a certain extent last year, but I wasn't as committed to it. Like if I was facing a guy who I thought was pretty tough. Like I went back to what I was doing until I went the whole off season working on it, like making sure like, okay, if I'm gonna add this to my game, like I need to have the reps with it. So after that off season, I completely added it to my game, and it's my two-strike approach now.
You choke up a little bit more on the bat too with 2 strikes?
Yeah, I already choke up with no strikes, and then when I get 2 strikes, I choke up even more. So I swing a 32.5 bat, so I choke up to about a 32, 31.5 before 2 strikes, and when I get 2 strikes, it's like it's a short bat almost.
Yeah. It's crazy because there's this one swing I was looking at where 1-2 count. This was a couple weeks ago against Brooklyn at home for you guys. And 1-2, 93-mile-an-hour fastball, top of the zone. Maybe like a ball or 2 lower than the pitcher wanted it, but like a pretty good swing and miss pitch when you're ahead. And you hit a home run on that. It's one of your 4 home runs is on that 2-strike pitch there. And what stood out to me immediately is how far above the knob that you're choked up on it. You kind of mentioned it already, but how much confidence does that give you when you're like, hey, this is my like fungo, I'm just trying to put bat on ball approach point of my at bat, and I can still launch one, 370 feet over the wall, pull side, and it gets out in a hurry.
Right. I mean, like I said, there's no fear when I get 2 strikes. Like it's not that, that bat's over, especially if I go down 0-2 in 2 pitches. It's like most people would be like, oh, like that bat's over. But for me, it's just starting. When I'm fouling a pitch off and I'm still 0-2, and then he throws one in the dirt and I'm 1-2, I'm like, okay, like we still got work to do. And the best feeling is when I start 0-2 and I battle all the way back to 3-2 and get that ball 4. I'm just jogging down, smiling, like, yeah, I won that one. Like that's a good feeling. But
dude, you're one of the very few people on planet Earth that's comfortable 0-2. Are you kidding me? Like, were you ever uncomfortable 0-2? Was there ever a point in like high school or like travel ball where you said, oh, this is kind of an anxiety count for me? And how did you go about shedding that? Or was this just something you were born with?
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with y'all. Every time I struck out up until I was about 12 or 13 years old, I would boo-hoo cry on the bench. Like sit on the bench just sobbing every time I struck out. And then my dad was like, all right, like if you're gonna act like that when you strike out, we got to learn how to not strike out. And I mean, that's kind of
the funniest.
Too.
I did the same thing, and my dad told me, stop crying. You need to learn to not cry when you strike out. The solution of just, how about we just not strike out anymore?
Yeah, just don't strike
Why
out.
didn't my dad think of that one? No, I don't think it would have worked for me. I would have just ended up having less power, still striking out, and still crying. So that's a really cool outcome there. Is there some sort of crazy backstory as to how you became the defensive wizard at first base? Every time you made an error, were you very upset or something? So you just stopped making errors? Like, how did you become the defender? I wasn't expecting to go this quick into the defense, but like when people think Trey Morgan, and honestly, one of the first things I ever saw from you at LSU, like early in your collegiate career, was just watching the way you move around first base. I'm like, who is that guy? Like it's so aesthetically pleasing to watch you play first base. How did that happen? Because like, a lot of times, like center field, shortstop, that's usually just some natural athleticism, and a guy just happens to be a freak. Then they work on the fundamentals. Like it's not usually something that you're just born with to be, this defensive savant at first base. How'd you get there?
I say that goes back to my dad also, and the questionable drills that we used to do. I was like 7, 8 years old, and he'd have a bucket of balls, and he'd start at second, and throw picks as hard as he could at me, and then he moved to shortstop, throw them as hard as he could at me, and then move to third, and I had to catch 10 in a row at every spot. So 10 in a row, 10 in a row, 10 in a row. And then we take a little water break, and then he'd go grab his bat, and he'd have his glove in his hand, and he'd throw it up with his glove, swing one-handed as hard as he could, and I had to catch 10 in a row again. So that kind of took the fear of the baseball away from me, which I feel like is the most important part of defense, because even to like right now, when I'm taking grounders on like, let's say a choppy little infield, and I feel that fear of the ball, and I'm like, oh, that's how, like, that's when you make your errors, when you're expecting like a hop because you don't want it to hit you, obviously. So he took away that fear of the ball from me, and that's kind of where that came from.
That's fascinating. The thing that jumps out to me about first base defense too, for you especially, is like flexibility was like clearly a thing for you. And like when you were at LSU too, when did you start training flexibility? Have you ever trained it, or are you just like, naturally like, I'm going to get into the full split if this means that I'm getting it out for my guys?
Yeah, I have never done anything to do with my flexibility ever. It's just like a natural, like if you asked me to do like or touch my toes right now, I couldn't. But it's using the base as kind of like to push off up till the point that I can't anymore. So it gives the illusion of, oh, he's so flexible. But no, it's really just like a max effort thing every time. But I am starting to get into some yoga classes, so maybe that'll help my flexibility.
Are those via YouTube, or are they like hot yoga, like you're actually going into a studio?
No, actually studio. Yeah.
Good on you.
That's crazy though. If I did any of the things, I'm not flexible either, but if I do any of the things you do at first base, I've got serious muscle tears that I'd be tending to after that for sure. So I think you're selling your flexibility short there, but the outfield then too, because I imagine that's something that you did play plenty of in college as well, but just having that versatility is absolutely huge, especially in today's game, and we're seeing that. But how much of that did you really know would be still a part of your game going into professional ball and beyond that, or even through college? Like, did you always see yourself as a first baseman, or did you always take a lot of pride in being able to play a good corner outfield as well?
So for the first 2 years of my college career, so in high school, I messed around with center field a little bit, but I never really learned how to play the outfield. Like I was just running around catching fly balls. I didn't start working on outfield until my sophomore year of college. And I don't think I played any games in the outfield that year, maybe one later, but it was like, I mean, Coach Jay, he's such a smart dude. He's one of the best coaches I've ever had. He was like, Trey, like, if we're going to win a national championship, maybe it's not this year, maybe it's next year, like, you're going to have to play some games out here and feel comfortable starting out here just in case we get a big bruiser first baseman who, can't really run around in the outfield. And little did I know, like, we were going to get a big bruiser first baseman, and I was going to run around the outfield for a little bit. But until I started doing like drills out there, man, I wasn't comfortable. I used to see my name on the lineup card in left field, and I was like, please don't hit a ball to left field. Like, please just keep it in the infield. I say I didn't get comfortable in the outfield until I did it for like a couple months, and I had to dedicate a lot of time to it because my thought process was, how long did it take me to get elite at first base, and I need to do this in a short amount of time so I'm not a traffic cone out here in left field. Like, I need to figure out something. And so it was staying after practice, catching fly balls off the machine, not even taking ground balls pregame.
Wow.
At first during BP, like just going to left field and taking reads off the bat the longest time. So that's how I got comfortable.
So even if you were on the card, like starting at first base, you would go do IO and left.
Yeah, go take fly balls off the during batting practice and left. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what did the offseason look like for you then? Because I'm sure there was a good bit of time too spent in the outfield, like trying to get reads. Where do you spend your off seasons?
In Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Because I'm from New Orleans, so it's like a hour and 20 away from Baton Rouge anyways. So if my parents need me, they could drive up a little bit, or I could drive to them. But the off season was huge. How short that college off season is.
Yeah.
Having Dylan with me was awesome. Like, because watching him change from an outfielder from when we were freshmen there and he was stuck in right to move into the head spot in center and just hawking balls down left and right. I'm like, dude, what did you do? Like, what did you do? Give me something to help me. And I mean, we just worked on first steps. We worked on judging like sounds of the bat. like when it's off the cap, when it's jammed,
Sounds
or like bad swings, stuff like that. I mean, he just knew so much about the position, and he helped me out so much.
So I want to follow up on that real quick because I just got done watching Dylan for a week. Indy was in Rochester, and I texted Arm. I was like, "This is as comfortable of a defensive center field that like I've seen in professional baseball." And like you see guys track balls down, like Pete Crow Armstrong. You know, I've watched him for 3 weeks to a month worth of games over the last 2 years, but like that guy's closing speed is awesome. Dylan's first step and like the way that he drips the ball.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, was there a secret sauce that he transferred over to you? Like, what's the word there?
No, my first step does not look like that. It's I'd give it its average. Like I still freeze a little bit, but it's like when they make contact, he just knows where to go. And it like I was sitting there behind him, like, dude, that's not normal. Like what? Like how did you know that ball that was hit right at you was going behind you to the warning track? Like I'd sit there for 3 seconds, like, is it going? Like, where's it going? And he just took off straight back. But I mean, he helped me a little bit, as much as he could, coming from what I had.
Gotcha.
Well, that leads us kind of into a fun conversation about your national championship team and just the players that you had around you, and several more that are going to be taken in this year's draft, probably in the first round as well. But that experience in itself had to be pretty incredible, not just from, of course, winning a national championship, but being surrounded by that talent. And you're still kind of, being able to reap the rewards of that by, working out with these guys that bring the best out of you. And I'm sure they'd say the same about you as well. Like, what can you say about, especially that last year at LSU and how maybe that prepared you for professional baseball as well, being able to be surrounded by a bunch of guys who are on their way to being professionals and not just being professionals, being really good ones. We already have one in the big leagues and one that's knocking on the door in Dylan Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, I think me personally, like, obviously I'm biased, but I think that's the greatest team of all time. Like, no knock to all the other national championship winners, but, I mean, you look back, only team that I watched was that Vandy championship team. I think it was in 2019. I think that 2019 year, something like that, with Kumar Rocker and Jack Lder and them. And I was like, okay, that team's crazy. Little did I know my junior year we'd have a team that was just like that, pretty much. It was that unstoppable. But that year was so much fun. Being number one for, 3 months, showing up every day, talking about it, because we weren't going to, hide from it. Like, we know we're the number one team in the country. Everybody wants to beat us. So what are we going to do so that teams can't beat us? So, I mean, that was just – and then stepping on the field, and it's Paul Skeen's bump day. Okay, we have to score 2 runs and we win. So that's it. Let's give them a 2-run cushion and the game's over pretty much. And then we get to a team's, number 2 guy, number 3 guy that can't compete with our number 2 and number 3, and our offense is the best in the country. I mean, the amount of work we put in to get to that point made that national championship feel like it was one of the best experiences of my life.
So obviously there's no chance that any previous team had the notoriety of that team that you were on. So you had never experienced that before, I'm sure. But like, did part of you feel like you were in the Beatles at points? Like like being on the road in an SEC town, and you've got Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens and Trey Morgan and Tommy White. Like the list went on, man. That was as star-studded of a college team going in as like we've ever seen. How did you how did you and the team as a whole kind of handle that like celebrity that we've really never seen before in college baseball?
Yeah, my first 2 years in college were fun, like, a lot of fans, everything like that. But nothing was like that third year after, let's say, our second or third series. And everybody was like, okay, they're legit. Like, this isn't just talk. We'd come into SEC towns and pull up to the field, and there are so many people just waiting on us to walk out the bus and go to. I'm like, how did y'all even know what time we were pulling up? Yeah. everything. And then the SEC tournament where you're already treated like a rock star. No matter what team you are, you already get the police escort, the bus, all that. I mean, they are we're leaving the hotel. There's a wave of them outside the hotel. And then we drive to our practice field. And then we walk back on the bus and we driving to the field on the bus. And we just see the Arkansas game was crazy. The amount of people that were there outside the stadium while the other game was going on, just outside waiting, was insane. And then I'd say the biggest like rock star moment was after we won, and then we all had like a little deal with Canes. So we showed up to Canes and did like work there for the day. Yeah, I felt like I was a rock star. Like the people just came in screaming, sign this. I'm working the drive-thru. I was like, this is awesome. This is pretty cool.
I mean, in what's funny about the way the season kind of unfolded too is I'm thinking about like the College World Series in itself too, and like that really put it in perspective for me because we're not there on the road with you guys through the SEC, so like seeing the numbers on the viewership and things like that as well. I mean, I'm trying to imagine like being in your shoes there, where like it's one thing to see all those people, but you could almost still count or ballpark in your head how many people that is. It's in the thousands. And then you look at the numbers on your College World Series, and it's millions and millions and millions of people tuned in to watch you guys win it all. And I was in London, and I stayed up all night to be able to watch Lder versus Skeens, which I don't think will ever be beat. I was covering the MLB series out there, and I was like, okay, not sleeping tonight. Very glad I didn't sleep. It ended up being a game that went pretty long, but a classic. Did that almost blow your mind as well? Like when you saw the numbers on how many people were tuned in, or at that point being in Omaha, the filled out crowd there, like were you almost like kind of numb to it at that point and you're just playing ball?
I'd say the first game that we stepped against Tennessee, we stepped on the field and I looked around and I was like, whoa, like I've played in front of a lot of fans. I played in front of I think we had 13,000 against Tennessee that same year. We had 13,000 in the stands, and I was like, okay, this is loud, this is rowdy, but nothing was like that field in Omaha when we took it. And they have the national anthem going, and then they get home of the Tigers, and everybody's screaming. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So, and going back to that Brett Lder and Paul Skeens game. It was the one time that I noticed the team, we had kind of a different aura about us. It was more of we're going toe to toe with somebody who's like us. So yeah, the laughing and the jokes were there, but it was more like, I mean, do y'all want to go home? The conversation Coach Johnson had was, he said, I mean, look to your left and right. Do you ever want to see these people again ever in your life for a celebration or something like that? And we were like, yeah, we don't want this to be over. And he was like, so you better win. And then that was it. Then we went on. And one of the best games I've been a part of. And I'm glad we won.
I'm so glad you said that, because I genuinely think that Wake Forest team probably wins almost any other year. If they don't run into you guys, that team was insane. They win probably any other year.
Right, definitely. I mean, you're looking at, I'm at first turning around, because they have the stats in the face on the scoreboard of everybody on there when they're coming up to hit. So first time through the order, I'm turning around, looking at everybody. I'm like, 336, 350. 364 with 30 homers. What are we playing here? So that was crazy. That team was really good.
Well, and dude, you got to deal with Lder for that start as well. Seeing that guy, was that the best arm that you had seen to that point in your career? And then, I mean, obviously you've gotten into pro ball. Are there other arms that jump out to you, or is Lder kind of the guy that, you may hold in the highest regard?
So I'd say my freshman year facing Jack Lder was kind of the top, because, I mean, that guy threw me 3 different fastballs at 91, 92, the first two just to like dot him, and then he threw me 98 at my neck, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not ready yet. But watching the pregame of Rhett Lder, you know, we watch film and all that, get our stuff on him. I was watching him pitch, watching how he attacks, and I was like, it was the one time I've ever said this for a right-handed pitcher. I was like, man, this guy's got a shot to strike me out. Like, this guy can strike me out one of these at-bats. So my thought process was I got to get to him early in the count. Like, I can't let him get to that off-speed because it's wicked, and that changeup is dirty. So I was like, okay, I got to attack him. So you look back with that in mind, I came up in a situation later in the game with a runner on second and 2 outs, and I went first pitch fastball, you know, tried to hit the ball through the 5-6 hole, but it didn't get through. And then you look at one of my other at-bats where I took the fastball early, and he struck me out later in that at-bat on a fastball inside. So that's following the plan in one at-bat and not following the plan in another. And that's the two different outcomes. So
transitioning into pro ball, was there a moment where, and statistically speaking, the answer would probably be no, but I'm sure there was. Like, was there a moment where you're like, whoa, this is a little bit different? And did that come in low A? Did that come maybe just working out at the complex? Did that come in high A? Like, what was the point where you're like, okay, this pro thing's a little bit different?
Yeah, I'd say it was my first at-bat as a professional. Yeah. My first at-bat in the FCL. You know, I'm nervous. They're playing some random walk-up song for me. I don't even remember what it is. And I walk up there and we're facing a lefty. I think it was for the Braves. It could be for the Twins, some team like that. First pitch out his hand, front hip slider, boom, right down the middle. I'm like, okay, you got that. I've seen one of those before. And then he threw another slider that started down the middle and ended up, it hit the back gate. The catcher to catch it, I swung at it. So 0-2, down 0-2. I get in my little crouch 2-strike stance, and he throws a back foot changeup with 2 strikes. And I'm like walking back to the dugout, like, I don't know what just happened. And then the hitting coach goes, "Yep, welcome to pro ball." and that was it. I was like, dude, am I good enough for this? Like, I just got diced my first at bat. Like, it was nothing. But yeah, that was kind of my wake up call, honestly.
When was the moment you realized you were good enough for this? So, like, you know, obviously that's the moment where you're like, oh, damn. I'm sure there's another moment where it's like, yeah, you know, I'm cut out for this. Let's get working.
Yeah, I'd say it was the 2 meetings I had when I got called up. Sitting in that office and hearing him say, "You're good enough to go to the next level." It's like, you know, kind of an ego boost, but it's like you're stepping into unfamiliar territory again, just like you're stepping onto the complex. So doing that twice was kind of like, okay, like I'm doing something right. Like, let's just keep doing what I'm doing and keep crossing the levels.
I thought you were going to say the very next game, because that very next game at the complex, you went deep. I think you had 3 hits in that one as well.
Did have a good bounce back game, but that was, I don't know. It was kind of that first at bat shock. Like, I was still had that in the back of my head because I had never been diced like that before. Like, I've struck out on 3 pitches before, but maybe I at least touched one of them. I wasn't close to my 2 swings, so that would really mess with me.
Is the defensive side of things any different in pro ball? You talked about like not being, you know, afraid of the ball because of the way that your dad kind of conditioned you to that, which is great because these guys smoke them. So I'm sure that helps a lot at first, but then, you know, in the outfield, it's just a different read because the ball probably, you know, carries a lot more than maybe what you're used to. It comes at you a little bit harder than you're used to, but at the same time, these metal bats and the way these guys are swinging it, maybe it does prepare you a little bit more than people think. I'm curious, was there much of a difference defensively for you going from college to pro?
It was just technique wise in the outfield, honestly. Like, I was a raw outfielder who, you know, figured it out, but that's not the pro ball way. Obviously, like, you do things the right way. One, so you don't get hurt. That's the most important thing, like throwing the right way so you don't get hurt. I would go up there and throw the ball as hard as I could, all arm, just swing it like I'm a first baseman around the field, and they're like, hold up, Trey. Like, you're going to blow your elbow out if you keep doing that. So learning to use my legs and using some momentum when I'm going, balls on the ground, attack it, slowing them down with my feet. And I got to play a little bit deeper than I did in college. When I was in left in college, I wasn't as deep because I felt more comfortable running backwards, surprisingly, until I did run full speed into the fence one time, like full speed, didn't even slow down for a second, but I do feel more comfortable running backwards. So that's why I played more shallow. But now it's like we're a certain amount of steps from the wall, and they have all these, analytics on you to make sure you're that far away from the wall and in the right spot. So I'd say going back to that, yeah, it's more technical playing in the big league or playing in the Pro Bowl.
So you just brought up something that, like, I don't think we've ever talked about on this show, and it's training for durability. Like, that is something that changes when you get to pro ball, because in college, like, you're training to be really good and you're training to, like, get stronger and faster and all that. And, like, obviously you're still working to get stronger and faster, but something that, like, I've heard from, big leaguers, but also, like, guys that are making their way up is, I'm focusing on staying on the field for the first time in my life. How has your day-to-day changed as you kind of, like, prioritize, I got to stay on the field for 6 months every day?
Yeah, that was one of the lessons that I had to learn, honestly, because I play the game so hard. Every time I play, I treat it like it's my last time playing baseball, because you never know when it's your last time actually playing. So after I got drafted, played in the FCL for a few games. I got called up to low A, and I was going through low A, doing well. But then there was a ball hit down the line, and I dove for it, kind of about, like, I couldn't catch it. We were shifted for a righty, and he kind of got jammed and hit it down the line. So I dove and flipped all over myself, and I fractured my humerus, which was honestly, like, the best injury that could have happened, because that's the bone that comes down and kind of tears your labrum. But mine didn't tear. Mine came down and just broke off. So I didn't need surgery or anything. It was just kind of like a rest. And then I got hurt again. And they called me into the office. They're like, look, like, you're a really good ball player. You play the game hard. But, dude, you got to stay on the field. Like, this isn't like a 70-game season. This is like, we need you to play 162 games at some point, because you're going to play every day at some point in time. And I was like, I had no clue. I still tell the trainer on this team today, I'm like, man, don't like yell at me to do, work on my body. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I've never had to, go do contrast, because I got to be ready. Like, in college, you just woke up and, I feel great. Like, I'm going to play. I got 2 off days back to back after this. Like, I'm going to be chilling. So it's learning the process to take care of my body, take care of my arm. And that's what I've really learned at high A, because our trainer is so good. And he's, teaching me how to use the modalities and how to keep myself on the field.
I think one of the most underestimated aspects of the transition is how many more games you're playing, right? And it's a 60, even for you guys, like, you make it to the postseason, you play all the way down. It's like, what, 65 games at most that you're going to play?
We played the longest we possibly could, and it wasn't even half the amount of games that they play in MLB, which is crazy.
And not even half of what you're going to play in high A or
right.
When you get promoted to double A, like, even more games there, and then triple A, even more games there. And, like, yeah, it eases you into it, but nothing eases you into the jump in pro ball. I wanted to kind of use that real quick as one of the last questions to ask you about the Rays, and you talked about coaching and just the development, and the help that you have there, and just kind of the people in your ear that are in your corner. And there's a reason why the Rays have developed talent with the best of them. And I think that's clearly a part of the reason why. Can you speak to that already? A little bit of just from your experience, what this Rays organization is like, and how they help players, talented players like yourself, continue to get the best out of yourself? Like, how's that experience been for you?
Definitely. I mean, the player development side of this organization is second to none. Having, we have a mental coach or a whole mental department now that different people, come in and out, and we can talk about the mental side of the game, which I took
So important.
Yeah, like I used to take it for granted. Like, oh, I woke up, I'm not feeling it today, and nobody cares, sort of thing. Like, show up and play.
Yeah.
But having somebody speak to about that is insane. Like, it's really helped me. And I come from, what's different about this organization is that when you're in the training room, like, avoid the training room at all costs. That's where I, came from. Like, you don't want to be in the training room. They tell you, please get in the training room. Like, go in there, go do something to keep yourself healthy. And I'm looking around like, is this like a trap? Like, are y'all sure? Because I see them writing down every time I come in this training room, and they're not writing it for themselves. But yeah, no, they really mean that. Like, make sure you're taking care of your body. Like, even if you're like your legs are sore, like a normal soreness, they want you to say something so you can go, get something done, because they don't even want you to be sore. They want your body to be 100% as many times as possible throughout the year. So they're awesome.
It's so funny, like walking into a clubhouse and seeing like the sign-up sheet for a sport massage, and like it's full. There's no harm in putting your name on that and getting a quick just assessment on where you're at and all that. But you're in high A right now. You talk about the player development. There is a guy that I think is as good of an example of player development as we've seen. He's super young. What's being Xavier Isaac's teammate like? That guy is a behemoth of a human being. How does he operate in a way that is just different?
I mean, he doesn't act like a high school kid at all. Like, you can kind of tell the difference early, in spring training. I'm like, oh, that guy didn't go to college. Like, the way he acts and everything. But X isn't like that at all, man. He's mentally strong. He's a good teammate. And he goes about his business the right way. I mean, every day we show up. Obviously, we have little competitions and stuff on the field because it's just me and him at first base, going at it every day. But off the field, I mean, we're the best of friends. We hang out, everything like that. And that's something that I feel like I showed him how to do, because I could kind of go into his head of the Rays, drafting a first baseman right after they draft him, and then we're put on the same team in Charleston, and he's like, wow, like, is this dude coming for my spot? I had to deal with the same thing in college. My freshman year, they had a guy who named Kate Beloso, who I played with in high school, and he was a year older than me, and he got signed by LSU, went up there, had a good freshman year, was the starting first baseman when he returned. But then I had a really good fall and everything. And Cade took me under his wing and showed me. He was like, look, you're good, but let me show you how to go about this season. Because in high school, you play, 30 games?
Maybe.
Yeah. 30 games. He's like, look, this is different. Like, we have goals to play baseball for a long time this year. So let me show you how we do things. And that's kind of what I was able to do with X. Like, yeah, we're going to compete every day. Like, I'm not going to take it easy on you. You're not going to take it easy on me while we're practicing, while we're going at it. But when we're in the locker room, when we're, at the apartments, like, bro, we're friends. Like, we're going to hang out and everything like that. But, yeah, that's how X is.
I love that. That's really cool, too, because, I've talked about that with a few different players that played in college. And they have the joke. They're just like, oh, like high school guy. Anytime one of the high school guys does something a little bit like different or quirky or whatever, because it is, if you think about it, like it's just a totally different experience that these guys have had or not had, and they get thrown right into this setting, and they probably feel like a little bit of a fish out of water.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to ask is kind of off of that as well. Well, first of all, that guy Xavier Isaac, we watched him in the spring breakout game, the 2 homers that he hit. the one backside and the one dead central.
Yeah.
Does he just shock you sometimes with what he can do power wise? Like and also like I see him starting to come into his like personality even more. Like I felt like the first year he was very like low key. Now I'm watching him do his own celebration around third, and you know, in a fun way. Like I see him kind of becoming him, and I'd imagine that that's probably something that you kind of helped him do as well. Where it's like, you know, you can be yourself. You can go out there and have fun as long as you're putting the work in and producing.
Right. I mean, some of the things he can do, like he is so strong. Like I have an example. We're hitting BP on the field, right? And I'm going at him a little bit. I'm like, watch, I bet you can't hit the ball oppo like I can. And I'm just, placing balls, right on that line, back to back to back. And he tries for the first two and he fouls it off. And he's like, man, I bet you can't do this. Next pitch, boom, over the scoreboard. I'm like, no, you're right. Yeah, I can't. So, I mean, that was crazy. But, I mean, seeing him, it just helps. He's playing with confidence. And I feel like at this point in time where we are playing, baseball is 90% confidence because everybody's got the skill or you wouldn't be here. Do you just believe that you're truly better than everybody you're going against? And that's what I see in him this year playing with him. I'm like, he believes that he's the guy, and that's why he's playing so well. Like, if you believe you're the guy, I mean, you're not going to lie to yourself. Like, if you truly don't think that you're the guy, you're not going to say it to yourself. And you're not going to play like that. So seeing him hit a homer and round, third and hit this, like, tell him wake up, I'm like, yeah, that's fire.
Yeah. Love that. Trey, last one for me. How do you get your mind off baseball over the course of like the 6-month season and, like the grind of showing up every day and you're there for what, 4 or 5 hours pregame, and then you got a 3-hour game, and then you're there for 45 minutes after the fact, and you go home and it's time to go to bed. Are you a baseball fiend where you're getting up and consuming it, or is there something that you really love to do to get away from it?
Yeah, once I leave the field, I do not think about baseball at all. Like, not even remote. I don't even play MLB The Show anymore. When I get home, I play Call of Duty, I play 2K, or I watch some movies. There's no baseball talk unless, my dad says call them, and then I know that there's some baseball talk that's going to be built into that conversation. But other than that, no, I really avoid talking about baseball because for the longest time in college, really, and I'm thankful I went to college. I couldn't imagine getting drafted out of high school because in college I was like, is baseball my only personality? Like, is this who I am? Like, if I don't play good, am I going to be mad the rest of the day? Like, is baseball who I am? And we had a mental coach at LSU, and I talked to her about that. And she was like, no, you got to be able to find the difference in both of those. Like, you're two separate people. You're the person who puts on the eye black and fixes their hair and all that and goes and steps on the field and goes to war. But you're also the person who, after the game, walks out the gates and signs autographs for everybody and takes pictures no matter what kind of game you had. And being able to be not two different people, but being able to kind of differentiate yourself between those two things has really helped me.
That's awesome. And I think that's something that, we talk about, like sometimes a player can be slumping in the box and they carry that out into the field. But I think that can also like apply to life. If you're struggling in baseball, sometimes you'll carry that out into your personal life or vice versa. And so I think being able to separate those two is definitely something that's really valuable. And just this team in general, I mean, so many extremely talented players. We talk about like Braden Taylor. You got to watch, Chandler Simpson motor. Did you overlap with Simpson at all?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Played with him for, I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that.
Fastest guy you've seen?
Oh my! It's crazy how I'd watch him, from the dugout when he gets to first, and he doesn't get the best jump, but man, he's still there by a clear margin. I'm like, dude, if I get a great jump, it's still a bang bang play. if I get the second. So like that's not even fair. And he's one of the most electric baseball players I've seen. Like the ability to just turn a single to a triple to a run. Like we don't need a leadoff homer. He just needs a leadoff single, and he'll turn it into a home run. It's just as quick. So
that's so awesome. The last thing for me is what makes this a successful year for you? I have a feeling I know the answer, but just individual goal. What makes this, a year where at the end you say this went exactly, how I could have hoped?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to the highest level that I can at this point this year. I don't know what that is. Only God knows what that highest level for me is this year. But if I can leave this year saying I did everything I could to be a major league player, like obviously that's probably not in the works this year. But if I can leave and say I did everything I could to be a major league player, then that's just going to help me work this offseason to do it the next year and the next year and the next year. So that's kind of my goal. And the Futures games this year was one of my goals, and I'm kind of happy I hit on that goal. So that's kind of like the midway point to like, okay, I'm doing something right. So we're going to keep going until the end.
I love that. That's awesome, dude. Well, congratulations on that front as well. That's super exciting.
Thank you.
And I mean, I think you're well on your way to achieving that final goal as well. Can't have a much hotter start to what you're doing, and looking forward to the next promotion that shouldn't be too far away if you keep doing what you're doing. But dude, thanks so much for hanging out with us for 45 minutes. Usually we don't go this long, but I mean, again, just so many awesome answers and so much awesome insight for a guy that's still so early in your professional career. So can't wait to see what you got ahead of you, man.
Yeah, thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me.